Time now for our Politics Roundtable. Today we have Republican strategist Jen Ryan, the founder and CEO of Final Draft Communications. She previously served as Vice Chancellor of Communications for the University System of Georgia and Deputy Chief of Staff of Communications for Governor Nathan Deal. Democratic strategist Fred Hicks, the founder and president of the Hicks Evaluation Group, which has worked with hundreds of political campaigns for nearly 20 years. And Raul Bali, politics reporter at WABE 90.1 FM on your radio. He's the co-host of WABE's Plugged In. Welcome to panel, guys. I want to start with a unique dynamic between Olu Brown and Keisha Lance Bottoms. If you guys didn't know, she's a longtime member of Impact Church. In 2018, during her inauguration for mayor, her inaugural day, she started the day with a service at Impact Church, and Olu Brown was the pastor that was under his tenure. So an interesting dynamic there. But I want to go back to Olu Brown. The question is, do people know who Olu Brown is that are not in East Point?
Well, I think Faith and Raul and Jen, the answer to that is resoundingly no. But I think that if people are open and they're really looking to see, looking for something different like he's talking about, then I think they'll find him to be very likable, very engaging, and I think he could earn some consideration. But when you're running for governor, especially in a year like we have next year where you have the Senate election and you have all these other races, it's going to be really hard for someone who doesn't already have a platform and a following to break through. I think that's what he is facing. Even though he's engaging, even though he has ideas, even though he pastored a church that has a significant membership in Metro Atlanta, you have 159 counties in Georgia. You have 4 to 5 million people vote next year. It's going to be hard to break through.
There's a lot of work to do, Jen.
He's asking to run the 8th most populous state in the country, and he's extremely telegenic. Very impressive to watch this interview. But frankly, if you don't have the money, then you're not going to get the name ID you need. You're not going to get the campaign infrastructure in place that you need to run. I mean, it's an arms race for dollars in 2026. And it's finite. And so good for him for throwing his hat in the ring. But it's a very long shot in my book.
I do remind people that while a lot of people knew who Reverend Raphael Warnock was when he announced run, there was still a lot of people who didn't. I'd go out on the campaign trail and people who didn't know who he was. That brings us back to Jen's point, and that is, can he raise the money, build the name recognitions, run the commercials? Right. It's going to be really expensive. Is there a path? Is there a role model? Well, yes, you had a pastor-elected U.S. senator here in Georgia, but again, it's going to be that money arms race that comes into this as well.
And another dynamic here is between Keisha Lance Bottoms and Jason Estevez. Keisha Lance Bottoms, most people would say has more name recognition, but Estevez, I mean, he's getting endorsements from Atlanta City Council President Doug Shipman to several council members, the Georgia Federation of Public Service Employees, and many others. Of course, Ms. Bottoms will eventually get endorsements, but what does this say right now about the timing, Fred?
Well, so first of all, I think what people need to understand is that Jason has been in the trenches for a long time with Senator Estevez. He chaired the Atlanta School Board. He ran for office against Sheila Jones back about 15 years ago or so. And all before he ran for the state Senate, and he's been an active member of the state party and executive committee. So unlike Olu and the situation we just talked about, he has a platform, he has a network, and he has people out there, and he's been working with people that really has kind of given him the opportunity to get support. And again, chairing the school board where you have current city council member Matt Westmoreland and Ishe Collins. They served with him on there, so he's able to bring some of these relationships to bear. Now, it's an arms race still for money,
yes,
and he's going to have to be able to do that. And I think that Mayor Bottoms will be able to raise a significant amount of money, if not on this report, but eventually, and he's going to have to figure out how to do that. But yeah.
On that point, I know you want to weigh in, but I do want to get on your side of the aisle, on the other side of the governor's race. A group supporting Chris Carr has put out an ad. We're going to take a look at it, targeting Burt Jones, who is not in the race yet. Let's take a look.
But can we really trust Burt Jones? Bad votes, self-dealing, backroom deals to make the family business even more millions.
Let's nominate a conservative who will win. Attorney General Chris Carr, a strong ally of Governor Kemp, creating jobs and fighting crime.
Okay, so that's a portion of the ad that we saw by Keep Georgia Strong. Jen, why put this ad out when Jones is not even in the race yet?
Well, look, we're talking about it. It's great earned media. But I do think on the other side that it does set the marker for who is, seen to be the, presumptive person to beat if and when Lieutenant Governor Jones gets in.
And something interesting about this ad, if the ad played out for a few more seconds, you would see also President Trump in that ad as well. And I've something that I've been watching on the Republican side. You've seen some launches that have completely connected themselves to President Trump. Some completely connect themselves to Governor Brian Kemp. Some a little of both, but that was very clearly they had both. They were both in there.
We're going to hold our thoughts for now. We do have much more panel coming up right after this commercial break. Welcome back. We are back with panel. Fred, I want to give the word to you on this Chris Carr dynamic.
So I think that this is very interesting. Chris Carr raised $2.2 million over 40 days in the last reporting period. I think that if he shows a $5 million spot or so, that he's going to be quite formidable. And I think a lot of people have gone into this election cycle assuming that Burt Jones will be the nominee. But Chris Carr has a lot to say about that, and I think this ad just kind of supports that. Now, for Democrats, I think there's a lot of fear on our part. We feel fairly confident that Burt Jones is the weaker candidate in November because he's so tied himself to Donald Trump, and we see Donald Trump's poll numbers falling. Chris Carr is more tied to Brian Kemp and to Senator Isaacson, two of the most popular elected officials, irrespective of party, in Georgia in the last 20 years. And Chris Carr, I think, is a little bit tougher to beat.
They both have strong records, all right, and that is what we're going to see play out. They're going to both run on their records, and 2026 is a long ways away.
Long ways away, but not quite long ways away because we talk about it every week.
we do, right, I know.
I want to switch gears here really quick and talk about this PSC race. Raul, we know you wrote a story about it. What was your takeaway?
I think this was one of the interesting things. I talked to an election official from Forsyth County. He's a Republican appointee on the board, Joel Natt. And something important he pointed out is that because of what's been happening, the legal challenges, the PSC, the election structure, now the election has fallen this year instead of a governor year or presidential year. This is a year where you have municipal elections. Those are heavily Democratic turnout. And his warning to Republicans is you need to worry about that this is a municipal city year, and a lot of the voters coming out are going to be Democratic voters. And so I found that interesting talking about. We're still going to see, who comes out of that runoff, and then to challenge these two incumbents who are on the ballot.
We saw No Kings protest last weekend, and one of those protests on Shamley Tucker Road, we saw Salvadorian journalist Mario Guevara. He was wearing his press vest. He has a work permit to be here. He is in the country legally, but he was arrested and then later detained by ICE. It's raising questions about the freedom of press and just the randomness of everything going on. Fred.
Well, I think every institution that we hold near and dear to us is really under assault, under attack under this presidential administration. I would say no offense, but it is what it is with that one. Whether you're talking about education, you're talking about media, you're talking about the courts. And so I think it's a very unfortunate thing that we saw happen there. I hope that things do work out and such that the press is protected, because we need to make sure there's a voice out here giving us a voice and set of eyes on what's happening out there.
And we have a member of the press with us, another member, because I am myself. But Raul, what are your thoughts about this? Does it give you any pause going out to cover it?
I mean, we still have a job to do as reporters. And so, and Mario's been out there for years. For those who don't know his name, he's been covering that community for years. And I think the big thing you're going to see coming up here in the next few days, you're going to see journalism organizations like the Atlanta Press Club, which I'm on the board of. They're going to be coming out with statements and trying to lay things out. And you'll see other journalism organizations do this because, we still have a job to do to cover what's going on out for anything, whether it's at the state capitol or out on the streets.
And Jen, I just want to come to you as a voice, a conservative voice, because there's a lot of people in the community who see everything that's going on and say, that's what we wanted. This is why we voted. And then there's other people who voted for the president and said, I voted for him, but I don't like what's happening right now.
Well, I think two things can be true, right? I think that the ICE deportations and the crackdown is it's a direct result of years of an open border policy that now this administration is trying to clean up. That being said, I don't think anyone wants to see journalists who are lawfully here getting caught and sort of in the crossfire. But I do truly believe that this is a result of horrendous immigration policy and lack of enforcement for the last 4 years.
Not overzealous enforcement from this administration over the last 6 months?
Well, they're clean up on aisle 4. I mean, they're trying to right this massive wrong. Would tens of millions of people are flooding across the border, bringing in fentanyl.
Well, then why didn't they vote for comprehensive immigration reform last year? They're really so concerned about it. Why did
That
President
was-
Trump tell them to not vote for it?
And then you can enforce the border and not believe everything in that bill was the right policy.
Well, we rarely have everything that we agree upon in a single bill, right, Jim?
But you can still enforce the border. You do not need a bill to do that. That's existing law.
I want to share real quick another voice on this, and that's Republican State Representative Casey Carpenter from Dalton.
right.
He represents a 51% Hispanic origin district. And something he brought up, because he was doing an event marking the 13th anniversary of DACA. And what he mentioned was he's now hearing more Republicans in his circle bring up concerns about non-criminals being rounded up. So he thinks that that's going to start coming out from his side of the party.
So much so that he has a change.org petition hoping for immigration reform. Thank you all so much. We're going to head to break. We'll see you back on the other side.